The first name that I was given was Shawn Ann Berry. That was what was written on my birth certificate when I was born in May of 1964. And you know what? I've always really liked my name, especially my first name, Shawn. It's an Irish name, and it's spelled S-H-A-W-N. When I grew up in the 1960s and 70s, there were a lot of Lisas and Susans in school, but there weren't any other people named Shawn, and certainly not a girl. So I always felt very special. It was my dad that gave me that name. And over the years, I've certainly collected other names, other ways of identifying myself. And many of those names I've really liked. For instance, in grade school, I was a swimmer and a dancer. In high school, I was known to be friendly and smart and dependable, and even a rah-rah, because I was part of the high school pom-pom squad. And then in college, I was a sorority girl and a radio station DJ. After school, I became a CBS journalist and eventually a home renovator, a real estate broker and developer. And now today, I'm a Unity Institute Ministerial School student. So, woohoo. Now, in sharing all those names with you, I am sharing a bit of myself and what my life has been like. And I think those names do clarify that. And I said that those are names that I really liked, but you know, there have been some other names that I've collected over the years that maybe I haven't liked quite so much. And I wanted to share a little bit about those and go a little bit deeper. I mentioned my time on the high school pom-pom squad. That was certainly a lot of fun. A 16, 17, and 18-year-old doing those high kicks and the splits and lots of endurance to do that kind of activity. But you know, at that age for girls, one starts to compare oneself with others. And I noticed at that age that I was built a little bit bigger than some of the other girls and maybe weighed about 10 or 15 more pounds than some of the other girls. So I decided at that age that I was fat. Despite all my fitness level, you know, I was fat. Now that was a name I gave myself. I certainly didn't like it. There were other names that arrived by life circumstance, like child of a divorce. When I was 13, my parents divorced at a time when that trend was just starting in the United States. And then one of my parents was in so much pain from that they decided to turn to alcohol to numb themselves from the pain for a few years. And so then I became a child of an alcoholic. Interesting thing about that is those names really didn't bother me too much. They mostly made me curious, especially in my 20s. Now remember, I was a journalist. I spent a lot of time out investigating and reporting and asking questions. And I certainly began doing that when I heard of these names in the 20s. I started to read books, and I started to do therapy, and then I discovered a pattern of codependency that existed in my family, and I joined a 12-step group called Al-Anon, which I am eternally grateful for today. So in some ways, these names that I didn't like actually have led me to be where I am here today. They've created my quest for emotional health and spiritual development. I learned in Al-Anon that I was not a victim to those names, and I'm still not a victim to those names today. By going through Al-Anon process of the 12-step program, I've learned that I had knowledge and I was empowered in a strange sort of way. These names that I thought had been such a liability for me actually became a strength as I owned them as a valid part of my life experience. Now, I mentioned I was in my mid-20s when I found Al-Anon. Not only did I heal, but I had this huge spiritual awakening. I discovered a higher power. And it was also during this time that I found Unity Church of Overland Park right here in the greater Kansas City area. With an addition of a new name called Unity in my life, God was not just out here, but it was certainly in here. My early days in Unity were certainly about healing, but I also started to recognize this invisible force that seemed to be guiding and directing me forward. It was almost like a call from Spirit that said, don't go this way, go that way. Don't take this name, take that name. It was over 20 years ago that I experienced my first white stone ceremony at a Unity church. And for those of you that are not familiar with this tradition, the white stone is a meditation where we each get to sit in the silence together and we listen and we receive a new name. And then we get to write that name on the white stone and perhaps carry it with us throughout the year. That was during this very type of meditation that I received my first name directly from Spirit. Now, this wasn't a name that was from my parents or from my peers or even from myself. I really feel like this name came from God, and I received it through my Christ self. It was the part of me that made a conscious choice to be open to Spirit. Now, I think I might have mentioned that the white stone has always been one of my favorite services, and I've certainly collected a number of stones over the years. When I decided to do this service today, I went into my altar and started searching, and I came up with quite a collection. You can hear them in the box. I found one from 2001, and it's written in pencil. It has the word honor on it. You can barely read it. And there are other favorites in here too, like wholeness and love and joy. The interesting thing about these names is that once you claim them, they start showing up in your life. In the same way that when I was in my 20s, I bought this really cool red sports car convertible. But the minute I bought it, I started to see these cars all over the city, not just mine, but that one. It's the same way with these words. They just keep showing up and talking to me. There's another one here from 2010, and it says faith, and I can guarantee you that the year that I had that stone, that I most certainly had an opportunity to grow in and explore my own faith. So how many names have you had? And how have those names made you feel? When you were a child, were you wealthy, middle class, or poor? Popular or unpopular? How about musically rhythmic or musically missing the beat? Were you loving? Or were you a bit of a bully? Now, can't you feel these names in your head and your heart and even throughout your body? Think of a time in your life when you were hurting. What was your name at that time? And now think of a time in your life when you were unconditionally loving to another person. What was your name then? So do you get a sense of how important these names can be? Now, some of these names are superficial ones, the masks that we wear in society. And some of these names go oh so much deeper, like the white stone words. These are words that call to our soul. They perhaps define our essence, our divine Christ nature. Now, the focus on the white stone comes from a reference in the Bible to a name change as stated in Revelation. It's chapter 2, verse 17. And I'll read it to you. It says, "Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. To everyone who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give a white stone, excuse me, and on the white stone is written a new name that no one knows except the one who receives it." Now, it is thought that the writer of Revelation wrote this at a time when people needed some encouragement. Most likely they were being persecuted for their beliefs, and they were probably frightened for their lives. And Bible scholars don't know exactly where this reference to the white stones comes from in Revelation, but they do point to various ancient customs and practices. For instance, it's known that high priests used to wear a breastplate across them with 12 stones, probably different colored stones, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. And it's assumed that, or thought that perhaps one of the priests may have had one of those stones be a white stone, and it was signifying that they were a faithful person standing in the presence of God. There's also ancient Roman custom that shows that the white stones were awarded to victors in athletic games. So the winner was actually given a white stone with his name on it, and then the stone became a ticket that they actually brought to a special awards banquet where their victory was celebrated. And then also in first century Palestine, prisoners were given a white stone when they were released from captivity. The stone then became a symbol of overcoming adversity and a visible sign of freedom. So the prisoner had paid for his crimes, and he had this white stone in hand. He or she had a right to claim a new life. Unity's metaphysical interpretations of the white stone also tend to incorporate ideas of freedom and liberation and a new way of being. Remember our verse from Revelation, to everyone who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna. In the revealing word, Charles Fillmore suggests that the manna is our own inner spiritual food that comes from the understanding of truth. It's hidden because it resides within us. It's the thoughts that move us out of bondage and sense consciousness and provides a foundation for that spiritual white stone, the foundation of our true Christ self. Hidden manna then becomes a reference into our own spiritual truth that comes from within. In the Bible, name changes signify that something has changed within a person, that they have become someone new. In Genesis, God changes Abram's name to Abraham, and his name change signified his role as the father of many nations, which is exactly who he becomes. And then several chapters later, Jacob's name is changed to Israel. And as Israel, he becomes the example of the I am. Israel actually means he strives with God. So in both of these cases, these men become completely new people. As they take on their new names, they follow God, and they bring their individual Christ nature forward in service to others. Now, name changes can also be found in Christian scriptures or New Testament. One of my favorite characters or people in the Bible is Paul. Remember, he was previously known as Saul, and this man was incredibly outspoken, and he was someone that was a persecutor of people that believed in Jesus and God. And then he had this remarkable, out-of-this-world conversion experience, something so profound that he became almost the complete opposite of who he was before. So in today's world, that would be like a right-wing conservative Republican becoming a left-wing liberal Democrat and doing that overnight. It just doesn't happen, does it? Now, Paul did exactly that in Christian terms, and then became one of the most zealous orders in support of Jesus across the land. As Saul, he was known to be big and proud. As Paul, he was known to be small, humble, and very powerful. So how many names have you had? And how many different people have you been? You know, I feel like I was one person up until high school, and certainly a different person in college, different yet again as a journalist and a business owner, and definitely a new spiritual person in Unity. And then in my late 30s, I became a mother. Parenthood is certainly a big shift in life and in consciousness. Even in the midst of my joy and my precious babies, who I love dearly, I remember many hours of very little sleep and feeding babies and changing diapers and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? My old life is completely gone. The word on the white stone at that time may have been parent or mother, but the real shift in consciousness was in my relationship with the world. No longer was the world just about me, but the world was about us, my family, and all of us here in the chapel, and all of us here on earth, in the world. Taking on a new name is often a transitioning time in life, and it can be very, very challenging. In Reverend Robert Brummett's book, our very own, Finding Yourself in Transition, it says, Brummett points out that transitions usually come in stages, and they usually include an ending, and then a middle point of wandering and exploration, and then finally there's a beginning. But many times we have to let go of a previous way of being before we can truly create something new. And I'll share from Brummett's book. It says much of our old way of life, and indeed much of our identity itself, was formed as a response to some need that once existed. We formed beliefs, attitudes, and behavior patterns that may have served us well in our childhood. 30 or 40 years later, however, these same patterns may enslave us and make our life bitter because the circumstances of our life are vastly different. Now, this viewpoint reminds me of my time in Al-Anon. I changed my behavior by attending weekly meetings, but it took an entire year, a full 12-step process for that true transformation to take place. So I didn't get the new name at the end of each meeting at the week. I got the true transformation at the end of the year when I became a completely new person. Now, I think in Unity, we sometimes misunderstand what the term transformation actually means. It's not the baby steps of change that make us new people. It's the new name. It's the transformation that comes at the end of the journey when we've experienced that shift in consciousness. That is when a new version of our Christ light shines through. And you know what? We don't do this just one time in our life. We do this many times as we evolve and we grow. Now, I know in Unity that people like to celebrate our accomplishments, and I certainly do too. But this kind of transformational growth may not come with any fanfare at all. In fact, it probably won't. When you do the work to truly take on a new name, no one may know, but you and the source through which it comes. Receiving a new name often happens in private. So the Whitestone names have always been special to me, which is why I wanted to do this service today. As I look back at the stones in my precious box, I did notice one in particular that stood out to me, and that was the one from 2004. And that stone says, listen. I most certainly took that word to heart because that's the year that I started my daily meditation practice. Sitting in the silence every day for an extended period of time certainly changes a person at depth. And I know as a result of this practice that I have become a new person, and I'm a person that's always listening for this call of spirit, the call of a new name. I mentioned at the beginning of the talk that my birth name is Shawn, and it's Irish. But what I didn't know until just a few weeks ago is that the Irish interpretation of my name means gift from God. Now, how did I go 50 years without knowing that? When I saw that online, I admit I actually shed a few tears. It was as though in that very moment I took on an entirely new name, Shawn, gift from God. And I'm still stepping into exactly what that means. So now it's your turn. This is an invitation and an opportunity for you to receive a new name from God and through your Christ self. So in just a few minutes, after our song, I'll be leading an extended guided Whitestone meditation. My request in this process is that you really open up and breathe. Become receptive. Be willing to become a clear channel. And as you walked in, you were given a Whitestone, I hope like this, and a pencil, and also a little card that explains a little bit about where the stone came from. And if you don't have those materials, then you can raise your hand and the ushers will come by and give those to you, either now or during the song. So this is an invitation to be called higher, to bring forth the best of your Christ nature into this new year. So happy New Year, everyone. Let's celebrate by opening to our divine potential, listening for a new name, and a new possibility for 2015. I am light. As we join together in this time of meditation, let us become one with Mother Earth and breathe deeply. Place your feet flat on the floor and straighten your spine. Find a relaxed and comfortable position that opens you to the energy of spirit. Then close your eyes and breathe. Place your white stone in your hand as we pray. Become aware of the stone's weight and texture. Rejoice in the knowledge that this is your stone and no one else's. Perhaps rub your thumb against the flat surface or close your fist around it. It wasn't all that long ago that this stone, this little piece of God, was carved from the earth near Bethlehem in Israel. It came from a sacred place of birth and new beginnings. And now it is your stone, and it will soon have a message for you. Feel the stone as it becomes one with your hand and body as you breathe deeply. I am light. The very air I breathe is God, and I pull that into my body. I breathe in God, and I breathe out God. I am one in spirit. I am light. In my mind's eye, I see myself walking in nature. I walk on a well-worn path next to a beautiful forest of trees. I have all the time and space I need. I continue to breathe deeply as I take in the clear mountain air. Up ahead, I notice a mountain and a shimmering blue lake. Before that is the most breathtaking field of grasses and flowers that I have ever seen. I eagerly step off my path and enter into this field filled with colors of green and tan and yellow and violet and pink. The field shimmers and shines like nothing I have experienced before, and I realize that this is my own field of possibility. I continue to walk through the field and notice beautiful little white stones nestled in the grasses. I gently bend down and pick one up. Holding it in my hand, I continue to walk through the field and arrive at a wise old tree. This tree stands tall and majestic next to the lake. Old wise tree draws me into its rooted arms as I sit and lean back against its strength. I am light. Nestled in this sacred space, I open to the message of the white stone. I listen as Spirit easily brings forward a word that will guide and direct me in the new year. Breathing in and out, I open up in expectancy and listen in the silence. I am light. Ever so gently, I bring my awareness back to my body. I say a word of gratitude to the wise old tree and the field of possibilities for supporting me on this life journey. In my hand rests the white stone, and I bring it with me as I bring my awareness back into this very room. I am light. I also bring back a word that Spirit gave me in the field of possibility. When I'm ready, I gently open my eyes and write that word on the stone in my hand. I say a prayer of thanks. Now, some of you may not have yet received a word, and just know that Spirit will bring that gift in just the right time and space. I remain open to the energy field. This word may arrive in the next hour, the next few minutes, the next few days, or maybe even a week. But it will arrive at the perfect time and in the perfect space. As always, we say thank you for this time in the silence, a time of union with the Infinite One. We are most grateful. Amen.